It happened so fast. One minute I was walking through the dealership, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with the faint scent of leather and motor oil. The next I'm standing there staring at Shane, my younger brother, my own flesh and blood, as he casually tells me that I'm out. Fired. "Your sales approach is too soft, Troy," he said, waving me off like I was some insignificant thing. His words stung, but the real punch was how easily he said it. Like it was nothing. But before I tell you what happened next, kindly subscribe and comment where you're watching from. 16 years of loyalty, of running this place, building it from the ground up, didn't matter. He didn't even look up from his computer as Pete, the security guard, came in to start packing up my desk. The same guy whose daughter I'd helped pick out her first car just last summer. My stomach twisted into knots. This wasn't just business, this was family. The family business. Dad's dream. And now here was Shane taking it all and throwing it away. He had the power now, and all I was to him was a relic of the past. 2 months severance, he added, as though that would make it better. As though it mattered. I didn't argue. What was the point? I just took the box from Pete and walked out. The door swung shut behind me, and I stood there for a moment, holding the box in my hands like it was the last piece of what I used to be. I glanced up at the dealership sign. Callahan Auto. It was our name. But now it was his. I knew what was coming next, though. A week, maybe 2. Shane would be drowning in the mess he was about to create, and then he'd realize, too late, that relationships weren't just a soft approach. They were the foundation. The reason customers kept coming back. The reason we thrived all these years. But right now, all I could feel was the cold rush of betrayal, thick and heavy in my chest. My whole world felt like it was crumbling in slow motion. I walked out into the parking lot, the weight of the cardboard box in my hand somehow making everything feel heavier. 16 years. That's how long I'd poured myself into Callahan Auto. Every sale, every handshake, every late night spent making sure the business ran smoothly, it all came down to this. One meeting. One decision. I set the box on the hood of my truck, my mind spinning. My father had built this place from nothing. And for the past 16 years, I'd carried that legacy forward. I knew the names of our customers, their kids, the little details that made every sale feel like a personal connection. To Shane, that was all irrelevant. Numbers, turnover, speed, that's all he cared about. He didn't get it. He never had. How could he do this? How could he just wipe it all away like it was nothing? His words echoed in my head, too soft. I couldn't even process it. It was like the rug had been pulled out from under me. The anger rose up in my chest, but it was quickly followed by something else. Hurt. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been discarded, like I was never good enough, like all the years I'd dedicated to this place didn't matter to him. But then there was a small flicker of something else. A desire to move forward. A sense that I didn't have to stay in this broken place. I didn't have to let this betrayal define me. Maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to step away to build something new, something for me. The thought didn't bring me comfort, not yet, but it was there, pushing through the haze of disbelief and frustration. I couldn't stay here, not in this toxic mess Shane had created. It wasn't just the dealership that needed a change. It was me. I glanced back at the dealership one last time. Callahan Auto, my father's legacy. But now it was Shane's. And maybe, just maybe, that was the universe telling me it was time to let go. I took one last look at the dealership before I got into my truck. The sign, Callahan Auto, was the same, but it felt different now. Like a stranger's nameplate on something that used to be mine. My father's dream, my years of hard work, all of it had somehow turned into this cold, unrecognizable thing. I shoved the box with my belongings into the passenger seat, not even bothering to look at the items inside. It didn't matter. Nothing in that box could change what had just happened. The photos, the little trinkets from years past, the mementos of my time there, they felt meaningless now. Like pieces of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. I started the engine and drove out of the lot, the sound of the tires on the pavement strangely comforting. But as I passed by the dealership, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. This wasn't just about me being fired. It wasn't just about Shane taking over. There was more at play here, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it yet. The bitterness in my gut was still there, but underneath it, there was a nagging feeling. This was a crossroads, one I hadn't seen coming but couldn't ignore. Maybe, deep down, I knew that being forced out wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something else. It wasn't just the dealership changing, it was me too. I had to admit, despite the hurt, despite the anger, I felt something else. A strange sort of freedom. I didn't know where I was headed, but for the first time in a long while, I wasn't so sure I wanted to know. I was done trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. The question was, what was I going to do now? As I drove, my mind couldn't help but drift back to the beginning. Back when it was just Dad, Shane, and me before everything changed. Shane and I had always been different, but the divide between us had only grown wider with time. I remembered when I first started at Callahan Auto, fresh out of college. I didn't just want to sell cars, I wanted to build relationships to get to know people. I learned every aspect of the business, from washing cars to answering phones, making sure that every customer felt like family. It wasn't just about the sale. It was about trust, loyalty, making sure they came back. Could walk into the showroom and know who would be back in a few months, who needed a new family car, who just wanted to chat while they browsed. Those connections meant everything to me. Shane, though, he had a different vision. He came in with business school theories and charts about profit margins, always pushing for more. It's about the numbers, Troy, he'd say. Forget the hand-holding. Customers are transactions. You're too soft. I could never quite wrap my head around that. Transactions? They weren't just numbers to me. They were people. And I thought that mattered. But Shane didn't see it that way. He'd swoop in for a sale, close it quickly, and move on to the next one. No time for follow-ups, no time for checking in. Just targets to hit, quotas to meet. And it worked short-term. Sales numbers went up, sure. But what about the long-term? What about the loyalty that kept customers coming back generation after generation? Dad always tried to keep the peace, telling us there were different ways to do business, different styles for different people. But even he couldn't ignore the tension that started to simmer between Shane and me. We were supposed to be a team, but it felt like we were growing further apart every day. I should have seen it coming. Shane had his sights on something bigger, something more aggressive. And I was still holding on to the past, to the idea that people mattered more than numbers. The dealership had been my life, but now it felt like I was losing it to something I couldn't fight. The realization hit me hard. I wasn't just losing a job, I was losing the very thing that defined me. And Shane? He was going to push everything I believed in right out the door. I could still picture Dad sitting at his desk, the one that Shane had replaced just days ago. It wasn't just a desk to him, it was where he'd built everything. Callahan Auto wasn't just a business, it was a reflection of who he was. And he knew how to balance things between Shane and me. Dad understood that we were different, but he never forced us to be the same. He saw the value in both our approaches. He knew Shane was all about optimization, efficiency, and profit. Shane was sharp with numbers, always looking for ways to streamline, cut costs, and boost sales. He'd been that way since he started. But Dad also knew that the way I worked, building relationships with customers, taking time to understand their needs, was just as important. That was the foundation Dad had laid. Relationships built Callahan Auto. He would often say, "There's more than one way to skin a cat, Troy. You've got your way, Shane's got his. Let the customers decide which works best for them." But that balance, Dad's delicate way of making sure we both felt valued, started to shift once Shane took over. It wasn't immediate. Dad wasn't stupid. He'd seen Shane's approach change over the years. But he always believed in him, always thought Shane would settle into the role of owner with a sense of responsibility. Now, looking back, I realized how wrong that was. Once Shane had the keys, it was like everything Dad built was suddenly secondary. It wasn't about the customers anymore. It was about numbers. Just like that, Shane started pushing for faster turnover, more aggressive sales tactics, and less of that hand-holding I'd always prided myself on. I thought about the way Dad looked when he handed Shane the ownership papers, the quiet relief in his eyes. But I also saw the way Shane's face lit up, like he was finally about to run this place his way. He didn't care about the legacy Dad left behind. He wanted efficiency, power, and the numbers to show it. The dealership was just a tool, a stepping stone for him. And that's when I knew, The shift in ownership wasn't just about who controlled Callahan Auto. It was about the soul of the business, the values that had kept it going all these years. And now, under Shane, it was losing that soul. Dad's words echoed in my head, "Let the customers decide." But in Shane's world, they were just transactions. And that hurt more than anything. As I pulled out of the lot, my hands gripping the wheel a little tighter than usual, the weight of what had just happened pressed down on me. I could still see Shane through the rearview mirror, standing behind that fancy new desk of his, looking like he owned the whole world. It all felt unreal, like I was still waiting for someone to tell me this was all just a bad dream. But then my phone buzzed, breaking through the haze of anger and disbelief. I glanced at the screen, a text from Diane at Titan Motors. "Meeting still on for 2 p.m.? I didn't even think twice before replying, "Definitely." Just freed up my whole schedule. The moment I hit send, something shifted inside me. The confusion, the hurt, all of it started to settle into something different. This wasn't just a meeting, it was an opportunity. Titan Motors. They'd been a key partner for Callahan Auto for years, but now they were reaching out to me directly. I'd been negotiating with them for months on a new distributor contract for the Western Territory, but I never thought it would come to this. I never imagined I'd be sitting at that table, not as Callahan Auto's senior sales director, but as someone looking to build something completely new. I smiled, the first real smile I'd had since this all started. For the first time this morning, I felt a spark of hope. A chance to start fresh. It was a small thing, but it felt like a lifeline in the middle of all this chaos. Shane might have taken the family business, but he hadn't taken everything. I still had connections, a reputation. And now, maybe, I had a chance to build something bigger. Something better. I looked ahead at the road, the endless stretch of asphalt unfolding before me. There was a world beyond Callahan Auto, beyond the past I was trying to leave behind. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to move forward. The meeting with Diane at Titan Motors wasn't what I expected. It wasn't just about numbers or territory maps. It was about me, about the reputation I had built over 16 years, the relationships I'd forged with customers, and how those connections had shaped the way Titan saw the business. Jack Bennett, Titan's VP of Sales, sat across from me with a thoughtful look on his face as he slid a contract across the table. "We've been watching you, Troy," he said, his voice steady, almost admiring. "The way you handle your customers. The loyalty you've earned. It's rare and it's something we value." I leaned back, the weight of his words settling in. I'd spent years doing things the old way, building trust, not just pushing products. I had always thought that was the right way to do business. But hearing Jack say it like that, like it mattered to someone outside of Callahan Auto, was a strange feeling. "We want you to be our regional distributor for the Western Territory," Jack continued. "You'd control allocation to 17 dealerships, including Callahan Auto. Most of our top models go through you first." My mind was racing. A regional distributor. A chance to step away from the family business and build something of my own. The numbers were right, the opportunity was huge, and it felt like the kind of role I could really sink my teeth into. But then the reality hit. This meant leaving behind everything I'd ever known. It meant walking away from Dad's dream, from the legacy of Callahan Auto. "Why me?" I asked, still processing everything. "What makes me so special?" Jack smiled slightly, leaning forward. "Dealerships come and go, Troy. But relationships? That's what keeps this industry moving. You've built those relationships better than anyone else in our network. That's what we want." His words stung in a way I didn't expect. I had built something with my father's help, something real. And now, here was Titan Motors, offering me a chance to take that foundation and turn it into something even bigger. But was it worth it? Was leaving behind the family business, with all its memories and connections, the right choice? My heart still pulled me back to Callahan Auto, to the customers who trusted me. But my head was telling me this was the opportunity of a lifetime. It was a turning point, and I knew it. The question was, could I really walk away from the life I'd known? Could I leave behind everything my father had built? I was walking down the hallway when I heard it, Shane's voice, low and almost conspiratorial, coming from his office. I paused, unsure whether I should keep walking or turn around. But something in the tone of his words pulled me in, and I found myself standing just outside the door, my ear catching every word. "We'll clean house once Dad's completely out of the picture," Shane said, his voice full of that same cold, calculating tone I had heard too many times before. "New sales team, new approach. None of that hand-holding crap Troy does." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My stomach turned, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. "Troy's fine with customers," Shane continued, "but he's behind the times. Too much like Dad. Once the transition period is done, we'll restructure everything. No more soft stuff. We're going to be lean and mean." I stood frozen, the weight of his words sinking in. He wasn't just talking about changing the sales strategy. He was talking about tearing down everything that had made Callahan Auto what it was. The relationships, the trust, the customers we'd known for decades, all of it was disposable to him. To Shane, it was just about the numbers. My hands clenched into fists, but I didn't move. The anger built inside me, but so did something else, something darker. Betrayal. This wasn't just about him taking over the business. This was about him erasing everything our father had worked for, everything I had worked for. It was like he was erasing me from the picture altogether. I'd always known Shane was ambitious, but this was something else. He wasn't just trying to run the business his way. He was trying to destroy what it stood for, tear down everything I believed in. And he'd been planning it all along. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't just being pushed out of Callahan Auto, I was being erased. I had spent 16 years building something that meant something to me, something I believed in. And Shane was willing to burn it all down just to make a quick profit. I turned and walked away from the door, my mind racing. The sting of betrayal burned deeper than I could have imagined. Shane hadn't just taken my job. He'd taken my legacy. And now there was no going back. I sat at my desk, staring at the contract from Titan Motors, the words blurring together. It felt surreal, like I was still processing what had happened, what I had just walked away from. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a job offer. It wasn't just about the money or the title. It was about proving a point, proving to Shane, to myself, that what we built at Callahan Auto meant something more than just turning a profit. I signed the contract. The ink felt heavier than usual, like each letter was a weight lifting off my shoulders. The role of regional distributor for the Western Territory was huge, a chance to build something of my own, to finally step out of the shadow of Callahan Auto and make a name for myself. But as the excitement of the opportunity began to sink in, the real reason behind my decision became painfully clear. I wasn't just leaving the family business. I wasn't just chasing a career. I was doing this because Shane had forced my hand. He didn't just take over the dealership, he was tearing apart the very thing our father had built, the thing I had poured my heart into for years. And I couldn't sit back and watch it crumble. Shane wanted to be the big shot, to rewrite the rules. He wanted the numbers, the quick wins. But I knew the truth. Relationships mattered. Trust mattered. The people we sold to mattered. I was walking away from Callahan Auto to make sure that legacy didn't die with Shane's cold, transactional approach. The job with Titan was a fresh start, a new direction. But it was more than that. It was my way of holding on to everything that made Callahan Auto different, the thing Shane had no interest in preserving. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about sticking it to my brother. It was about showing him and everyone else that there was another way to do business. And in the end, it would be the right way. I looked out the window, the weight of the decision settling in. It wasn't going to be easy. But nothing about this journey ever was. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally on the right path. I stood in the showroom, the hum of the lights and the shuffle of people moving about almost like background noise. Callahan Auto had changed, and I could feel it in every corner of the building. The lot was fuller than it had been in weeks, the customers were trickling in, and there was an energy that hadn't been here for a long time. I could almost hear Dad's voice in my head. "This place isn't just about the cars, Troy. It's about the people." I looked around, at the new sign, at the fresh inventory, at the work being done to bring Callahan Auto into a new era. It wasn't the dealership I'd walked away from. It wasn't the same place where Shane and I had spent our years building something that felt solid, built on trust and relationships. But it was still our business. Dad's dream. It would evolve just like everything else had. I had learned that the hard way. The thing I'd feared for so long, change had come. And it was inevitable. Callahan Auto wasn't going to stay frozen in time just because I wanted it to. The dealership had to move forward just like I did. Just like Shane did, even if his approach was different. The truth was, I'd been holding on to something that I thought was sacred. But I realized now that my approach was holding it back. The business needed to change. And if I wanted to keep its spirit alive, I had to be the one to lead it into that future, no matter the cost. Shane's departure, the betrayal, all of it, had led me here. It had forced me to confront my own limitations. And now I was seeing things with new eyes. I didn't need to fight him or tear everything down. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. The only thing I had to prove was to myself. It wasn't about revenge. It was about growth. About evolution. About making something stronger even when it meant leaving behind the past. I could hear the faint sound of the garage door opening in the back, the hum of another sale being made, the voices of the staff talking to customers. Callahan Auto would survive and so would I. We would both evolve. And that felt like enough.